Welcome to the first episode of Black Bitcoin Billionaires, The Nature of Sovereignty. This series promotes fiscally responsible principles within the context of making sure you're ahead of the curve as we shift more towards a digitally ran economy. What happens after the unchecked coercive game of monopoly can no longer sustain itself? Will a more efficient alternative emerge in its wake? And more importantly, how can we best prepare for what results? The economy of tomorrow is being built by the innovators of today, the ones with the audacity to dream of something better. And our community plays an integral part in how it looks, feels, and operates. The Nature of Sovereignty intends to highlight those change makers and share valuable blueprints to which we all can follow. Sovereignty is defined as supreme power or authority, and a sovereign entity has the right and power to govern itself without outside interference. That is the aim. And hopefully, we can have a little fun along the way. I'm Ian Gaines, Nature of G, Head of Media at BBB. So with that, I hope you enjoy this kickback. Today, we have the CEO of Fintech Recruiters, Nako Mbelle.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored to be invited here. Okay, so my name is Nako Mbelle. I am CEO of Fintech Recruiters. And what we do is we specialize in financial technology positions, otherwise known as fintech, and crypto and blockchain positions, which is quite interesting because there are not a lot of firms that work with blockchain and crypto startups. So we're really lucky that we're one of those firms that people come to when they're looking for talent.
How do you connect with clients? How do you connect with individuals to get them placed in the right positions?
Yeah, so we've been in the space. I actually got in, well, personally, let me go back and kind of get into my Bitcoin journey, because that's how I got into recruiting in the crypto. So I had a client, just a fintech client, regular guy, regular client at this point. I didn't realize he was into Bitcoin. And he asked me if I would accept Bitcoin as payment. And this was late 2016, like I'd say summer of 2016. So it hadn't taken off yet. It wasn't going like parabolic crazy like 2017. So
like, is this guy trying to scam me? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Trying to give me some funny money.
I'm like, isn't that what drug dealers are using? Like, I
Silk
don't,
Road.
I wasn't sure if I wanted to take it, but I like going the extra mile. I'm one of those people, I really like providing additional service above and beyond what's expected. So I thought, okay, you know what? I'll do it. I'll take it as long as I can convert it for dollars. And he's like, yeah, you'll be able to convert it. I'm going to send you information. This is the wallet you download. Back in the day, I downloaded my blockchain.info wallet, right, at the time. And Quadriga was a Canadian exchange, which blew up later, many years later, but that was the exchange that I used. And proceeded to, figure out like how to accept Bitcoin, download my wallet, how to exchange it to dollars, all of that. Unfortunately, I converted all of it. I regret it to this day, but it is what it is because I didn't know. I didn't know what I had and I didn't understand
May I ask how many?
No, I cannot. I
can't. Like, I will not tell you how many.
It hurts my heart. It hurts my heart. Yeah. So
as many of those stories, trust me, you're not the only one.
Oh, yep. I'm sure. So I converted it anyways. It kind of made me curious. I was like, this is really interesting because my background's African. So I right away understood like, oh my God, I can go to other countries and people won't, and the immigration officers, I don't have to declare it, right? It's I can have my seed phrase and just like go from country to country. Like it just immediately clicked for me. Like this is interesting. This is different. But I still was not a Bitcoiner per se, right? I still wasn't. I had to dig more. I had to do more research. And it took me a while. It took me like another, I'd say, at least 6 to 7 months to really kind of like, okay, there's something here, and I have to pay attention, And then I decided, this is interesting. There's a whole ecosystem here. There are actually people building stuff. So maybe I can specialize in this space, and that's how I got into it. So that was my journey. And now, I'm hooked. I am absolutely hooked. And I actually accept crypto as well for my services. And some of the clients that I have actually pay people in crypto as well. They pay them, if not all of their salaries, some of their salaries. So there's a circular economy that happens in this ecosystem that I don't think people realize. So most of the, not all of them, but many of the exchanges will pay you in crypto, right? The big exchanges, many of the wallets companies will pay you in crypto. And I'm actually looking, if anybody, if anybody is an engineer, software engineer, full stack, I'm looking for full stack engineers, and this client will pay you in Bitcoin as a salary. Okay, so if we have any engineers out there with React, JavaScript, Node.js, what else? GraphQL. Yeah, just hit me up, and I'm obviously not going to go through every role that I have now, but I have multiple roles, and not all of them are on my website. So if any of your listeners are engineers in particular, that's really where we're focused on, and that's the most urgent roles that we need to fill. Please just DM me. You can find me on Twitter at Nako Mbelle, which is my full name, Nako, and then Mbelle. That's the fastest way to get in touch with me, because I see my Twitter messages quicker than any other message, right? Which tells you a lot. But
yeah, that's most of us now.
Yeah, right.
2021, that's how we get our information.
Right, exactly. So hit me up on Twitter, DM me, and send me your contact info. Let me know, and I'll send you the job description. But everybody is hiring right now. We have a ton of roles, and there are all the crypto companies.
Right. So actually, I wanted to get into that. So what are some of the positions within that space that are in highest demand right now?
So the highest demand are software engineers, okay? And software, it depends on where you fall in the stack. So you could be a front-end engineer, full stack engineer, back-end engineer, DevOps. So DevOps is like, used to be kind of network security, but nobody does that anymore. So it's more like, a combination of software and infrastructure. So the infrastructure guys, so site reliability engineers, DevOps engineers, anything to do with the infrastructure. And then we also have protocol engineers, and protocol layer engineers could be blockchain engineers. So if you have Solidity, right? You know a little bit of Solidity, TypeScript.
Yeah.
So let me go through the languages. So
right. I think this is very, very important, because people are going to listen to this and they're going to be wondering, all right, what are some of the skills and requirements that employers are looking for?
yeah.
So if you can run down a couple of those, because I think that would be very insightful.
Sure. Okay. So the front-end engineers, we're looking for React, JS. Okay. So JavaScript, obviously HTML, CSS. So JavaScript, CSS, and HTML. Those are like the trifecta of front end, if you want to call it that. And then React is the framework that we're seeing most. We're also seeing a lot of TypeScript, JS, all of a sudden. I don't know why. And if you have a good grasp of design and sort of understanding design principles, that's also very beneficial. You don't obviously have to know how to design, because they're product designers that actually will do the design, but everyone wants a front-end engineer that has an eye for design. Okay, so that's the front-end engineer. Then you have the full stack. The full stack is probably the most in demand, because everybody wants, to see if they can kill two birds with one stone, I guess, right?
Under one income, right?
Exactly.
Right.
So full stack is exactly what I mentioned with front end. Okay, so React. On the back end, we're looking for Node.js is the most popular. JavaScript, of course. If you have Golang, that's huge now. Although Golang is usually tends to be more back-end engineer, But if you're a full stack engineer with Golang and React, like we'll definitely want to speak to you. Things like GraphQL. If you've got Kubernetes, tends to be a container technology. Kubernetes. Yeah.
Okay.
Although that's more on the DevOps side. But if you have Kubernetes as a full stack, that's great. You don't necessarily need it. Some full stack engineers will have MongoDB instead. But if you have experience with like AWS, Azure, and Google, so any sort of cloud architecture experience is really hot right now, right? And then backend.
Go. Yeah, please. Sorry.
Backend. Because the backend, Golang, huge, Node, huge, Node.js. If you have anything like, what am I thinking of? I mean, any Solidity developers are good as well. Blockchain type of people. And then, of course, you have the infrastructure guys. So, yeah, I can go on and on, but just call me, hit me up.
Perfect. So what areas within disruptive tech do you find to be most promising or have the highest potential for growth?
I would definitely say DeFi, believe it or not. I know it seems like it's hype.
Yeah.
But there's
for a lot of us Bitcoiners, we're like, okay, we'll see how this plays out.
Yeah. I'm seeing
we're agnostic. We're agnostic about it.
It's interesting. And the kids want to work. And when I say kids, I literally placed an 18-year-old this week in a startup.
Wow.
18.
Wow.
And here's
how much prior experience did he have?
Well, here's the thing. He's been coding since he's 10, right? Like these kids, they've been coding since they're 10 years old. But here's what's interesting. And this is what I really want to get across to our audience, particularly people who have historically been disenfranchised and who feel like they're not the playing field is unleveled, or it's not leveled, right? The playing field is not leveled. And that's true. But this space is the most level playing field I've ever come across. And this 18-year-old kid is an example. So I had no idea he was 18, right? We normally, it depends on the client, but some clients will actually send out a coding test. Okay, you do the coding test. I get the coding test. I'll send it obviously to the client. They'll say, okay, this person looks good. I'm going to get his resume. I'm going to get like a couple of other things. And I'll do a phone screen. So sometimes I'm not even, I don't know what they look like. I have no idea, right? And based on his resume, he quite a bit of, I poached him. So he was actually working at another startup. So I'm thinking, whatever, maybe he's in his early 20s, mid 20s, had no idea. So I'm speaking to this kid, didn't know he was a kid. He already has a mature voice, so who knows? Speaking to him, going through his resume and everything checks out. His GitHub looks great. His documentation in his GitHub looks good. He's done well on his coding exam. Everything's great. So now I need to just have a video call with him and, talk a little bit about the company culture and whatnot. I get on the video with him. I can clearly tell he's younger, right? And I'm not going to ask him how old he is, but there's no school, right? So I usually ask, oh, okay, can you tell me because I noticed there's no school listed. He's like, oh, I dropped out. Oh, I'm like, oh, you dropped out of thinking it's college. He's like, no, high school.
Wow.
What? He's like, yeah, I didn't finish high school. I just decided to because, he was going to hackathons. He was winning hackathons. His code spoke for itself. I've heard of other
true meritocracy in that
sense. Meritocracy. I've heard of other instances where 15-year-olds, 15 years old, and they're winning hackathons. And companies are like, oh man, maybe we can't hire you yet. Can you come back next year? Because we don't want to get in trouble by labor laws,
that's the most beautiful thing about this industry, that it is a meritocracy. So if you can prove your skill set, you can prove the work, then there's a position for you. So let's say I'm not a 10-year-old whiz kid, but I don't have any former training in tech, but I want to get into coding or development. Where do I start?
Yeah. So that's a hard question. There are
Mm,
coding camps. There are a
mhm.
ton of coding boot camps. I can't recommend one. There are lots of them. You can Google them. It's hard because some companies do prefer people, if you're not exceptional, if your code doesn't stand out, then they want credentials, right?
Got it.
They
Mhm.
want computer science degree, so it's a weird space in that if you're not exceptional, they want credentials. Do
Mhm.
you know what I
Especially
mean?
for larger corporations, right? Larger
Yeah.
companies. Mhm.
So what's beautiful though about crypto is that you don't have to ask permission to work on projects that are open source. And that's just open source in general. So if you are really passionate about certain projects, you can go into the repo and start contributing to the code. And some people will actually, not many founders will keep an eye on their repo, right, on their
Mhm.
GitHub. And
Mhm.
I've heard of people getting hired just based on a pull request. Like, hey, this person's doing something interesting, or they forked my code. What are they doing? Right.
Mhm.
So it's that kind of a space. If you work hard and you can stand out, and it doesn't matter. Like people in GitHub, it's some people have their pictures, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people have like, Papa Smurf, right? Like you know what I mean? You can have anything as your profile and your username. It's a true meritocracy. It really is, from what I've seen so far.
Mhm. Yeah, that's the beautiful thing, especially when we think about our community and historically being in more corporate settings, and there's a layer of bias, right? Or a layer of, okay, you have to work twice as hard to get half as much. We all know that, that story. But here they're like, I don't care what you look like. You can have, as you were saying, a Smurf or a Pokemon icon, and who cares if Pikachu is coding, you know, top notch Solidity protocol, then fine, okay, we're going to hire you.
Mhm.
So I think this is definitely a time for our community to look at industries like this, where you can show improve and be able to be in those positions that previously we didn't have as much space for or much opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, women, people of color, disabled people, it's like, yeah, just that's if you love to code. I mean, it's something you have to love to
That's
do,
also this very
right?
important part.
You gotta love to do it because it
Yeah.
will show. It will show people. And I also think that if you're a good writer, you might want to try coding. I find that there's a direct correlation between people
Mm,
who write very well and succinctly and their ability to code. Somebody explained it to me like, what did they explain? It was such a good analogy. It was like kind of like writing a book. There are many different novels. There are many ways you can express a story to someone. There's no right or wrong way. But some people immediately, when you read what they write, you're like, this person's a great writer. Do you know
mm,
what I mean? You
it's
know how
off
you
the
just
page.
know? Yeah, it
Mhm.
just leaves. And coding is very similar. It's something that you can easily very see. Like this person writes very clean, simple, um, code, and it's
Yeah,
something you can
it's concise.
recognize.
Hmm.
Yeah. So don't be discouraged if you feel like you're artistic, you're not good at math. There's a lot of logic to it, but if you're very good, like if you took a philosophy course, you might be good at coding because it is based on logic, and philosophy is also very logical. It's and math as well. So math is really about how you're thinking, your ability to think things through. So it's really clear thinking is what makes people good coders. Don't think you've got to be like a physicist or, you know, even if you didn't do too well in math, you might be surprised that it was maybe your math teacher that sucked, right? And you're able to pick
Right.
up coding really well because you're able to think very logically, and maybe that logic is more philosophical based than say what you learned in school with math. I hope that
Right.
helps.
So, uh, do you also position people who are non-technical?
Yes.
And what are some of the roles in that space?
Okay, so non-technical roles. Social media marketing is something that a lot of teams look for. Marketing roles, general marketing roles like PR roles. Um, what else? I'd say more social. You've got to really
Social
have a
media.
grasp on social media. Yeah, that's probably the biggest component
Mhm.
for the ecosystem, simply because of crypto Twitter. Like, we all live on Twitter in our space, so that's really important. And I guess Clubhouse now, right, is like the big thing.
Yeah,
So if
the
you've got,
elephant in the room.
right, the elephant in the
Yeah.
room, so if you've got a Clubhouse following, you might be able to capitalize on that, as well. But I would say the others, not so much. I don't think a lot of us are on Instagram, for example. I don't think that that's a huge channel for this medium. It's or for this ecosystem. So heavy Twitter, and a lot of and just even a blog like Medium is still really something that the space uses a lot. So Medium, blogging. So if you're a good blogger, YouTube,
Mhm.
huge still. And what else? Yeah. So there are some sales roles. They're
Okay.
usually with the bigger firms, like the consensuses of the space. Um, um, and there are a couple, obviously the exchanges will have sales roles, but a lot of the smaller teams that I work with are still working on their infrastructure and still really, really technical. So they might need a community manager, for example, as opposed to a salesperson. So if you got a soft skill and you're a community manager, but again, the community managers like really have to know the protocol, because people are going to ask you technical questions, right? And you may not be a coder per se, but you really have to understand
Mhm.
understand what they're talking about in order to explain what the
Explain it fully. Yeah.
yeah.
Frontwards and backwards. Um, yeah. So, are there any maybe tech boot camps or meetups or just in general career resources that you often advise your clients to get into, or also possibly any grants that are dedicated to minorities within the blockchain space?
Good question. Yeah, the boot camps is a hit and miss, and I'll tell you why.
Mm.
Because
Mhm.
there are people who've gone to boot camps and have complained to me and say, I can't get into space, or I'm not able to like break in, as a developer. And I think it really depends on your ability, right? So people are going to give you a chance, you can apply, but if they look at your GitHub and it's sparse, or your coding, you failed the coding exam, like, it doesn't matter what boot camp you went to. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. You can learn a lot of this like self-taught, believe it or not. You can learn. There are a lot of free courses. There are a lot of I know, like Solidity, for example. I'm not sure if there's a cost actually for Solidity in Consensus Academy, but Consensus has something called Consensus Academy, and a I think it's A16Z. Gosh, I can never say them properly. It's Andreessen Horowitz.
Horowitz. Mhm.
Yeah, they have a lot of courses that you can take, and all of those are free. I don't quote me on the Consensus one. It might be a cost. I'm not sure, but
Yeah. We'll put up a link later
yeah, but
for it.
there are a lot of free courses that you can take. There are boot camps where you don't pay them back until you find a job, right? So there are a
Mhm.
lot of those boot camps. But again, it's hard for me to say like which ones are great and which ones aren't, because I've heard complaints about all of them.
Right. And at the end of the day, it depends on your ability. Right.
It depends on your ability. Exactly. That's why you really have to have a passion for it. What else can I tell you? But we are seeing more sales roles, okay, open up. And and like I said, DeFi I think is probably where I'm seeing like a lot of opportunities right now, mostly for engineers. But if you understand the DeFi space as a non-technical person and you're able to explain it in such a way that people understand it, I can see that you can create an opportunity within a team. Because right now they're all engineers. Like everybody is technical. And
Yeah.
so they're going to have to figure out how to translate what they're doing to the rest of the space and the world, right? But there's more and more institutional interest in the whole ecosystem. So people who are able to sort of translate that, but it's still overwhelmingly engineers that I get requests for.
Right. I mean, that makes sense because we're building out this industry right now. This is developing in real time. So you need the hard coding skills to build the infrastructure. But as this grows, we need a marketing team. We need the social media. We need the sellers. We need the persuaders of the world, right? Because you can have the sweetest thing next to God, but if you can't explain it, you can't convince another person to buy what you're selling, then it's like having nothing. So I think that would be the next step for the blockchain industry for sure.
Yeah, yeah. The good news is that there's not as much specific blockchain experience needed as before. So people coming from other industries, like, don't worry if because obviously not many people have blockchain experience. So if you're from like a completely like the music industry, for example, but you're a developer, right, who's worked on like, I don't know, a music app or something, or Spotify. Let's say you work at Spotify. We want to speak to people from Spotify very much, like, yeah. So as long as you have an interest in it, we'll speak to you if you've got like the basic base layer technology skills.
Perfect. Well, Nako, this is absolutely a expert course you gave. If anybody is interested to dive in deeper and go further, where can they find you and hit you up?
Yeah, so my website is www.Fintech Recruiters. That's F as in Frank, I as in India, N as in Nancy, tech, TECH, recruiters.com. But again, I am best found on Twitter.
Twitter.
Yeah.
If y'all
So,
haven't gotten the message yet,
yeah,
that's
so
what we
follow me.
say. It's
You can
Twitter.
follow me on Twitter.
Hit up the DMs.
Now, here's the funny thing. I don't necessarily post my roles on Twitter because my Twitter handle, as you know, the space is so political. Good Lord.
Oh,
So
yeah.
because it's so political, I have Bitcoin only companies that I work with, right, who are maxis.
Yeah.
Okay.
We got a lot of those.
Yes.
That's our
And
bread and butter.
then I've got crypto companies, right, which work with everybody,
Yep.
and those usually are exchanges, wallets, they're neutral, if you want to call them neutral. And then I've got like I hate to use this, SHIT coin.
Bitcoins, you can call it. You can call it.
Right? Yeah, I work with everybody. Okay, I do not discriminate when it comes to my practice, my firm, the
Nor
recruiting
should
firm.
you. Nor should you. We
So
support that here at Black Bitcoin Billionaires.
yeah, right. And I still work in fintech. So I even work with non-crypto companies. But my focus is really like anybody that's disrupting finance. So I'm not going to work with like a bank or a traditional financial company. All of my non-crypto companies are still disrupting in their own way. So I work with neobanks, the banks that are 100% virtual, no branches, those type of banks, like the Revolu's of the world, right? But it's funny because the crypto companies are disrupting the companies that are disrupting the banks. So it's this like trickle. Yeah, it's really interesting.
You're making sure the community is gainfully employed Okay.
Love
So
it.
this is 100% what we need, because we can't stack sets if we don't have any pocket change. So
Exactly.
we don't have any fiat to put into it. So
Mhm.
you're definitely doing the work. Last thing. Oh, are you going to the Bitcoin 2021 conference?
Well, I want to, but I'm in Canada. And we have to quarantine for 14 days if we travel when we get back in a hotel.
That
So
is
I'm like,
true. That is true.
I really want to go, but I don't want to spend 2 weeks in a hotel room,
I understand
quarantined when I
that.
return. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying? And right now we're actually we're at what do they call it? Stay at home. We're at stay at home order again, where I am
Oh,
in
okay.
Toronto.
So
So
they did
only
another lockdown?
we're in another lockdown.
Okay.
Yeah. So things are
Well,
really strict
Miami will
here.
not be locked down. It's
Right,
gonna
I
be
know.
wide open.
Yeah.
Too open, maybe.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So unfortunately I'm in a country that's pretty like it's really strict, our rules. So, but I'm hoping that they stream it. I'm hoping that it's streamed, some of the
well,
conference.
so with that, we're gonna do some live streaming with Black Bitcoin Billionaires. So we're gonna have a whole setup, whole station, and we're gonna do interviews throughout the entire conference. So definitely stay tuned for that.
Okay, good. Yeah. If you guys can definitely, if you can stream and I'd like to see, the people and yeah, I'm going to watch your stream for sure. You got to let me know when you're streaming. Am I
Perfect.
following you on Twitter? I am, right? Of
Oh,
course.
that will break my heart if you're not. Uh,
Yes, yes,
I
yes.
think you are. It's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, I just got
Yeah.
to make sure because I'm getting so many DMs and messages a lot. So sometimes I'm like I lose track.
Yep, this industry is growing. Well, Nako, thank you so much for coming on and shedding some light on what you do. And for our audience, it is definitely appreciated. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's nice being here.